as you know, introverts or people who haven't networked a lot, they feel uncomfortable and they don't know what to do. So one of the things I suggest is just ask the other person about themselves. Most people like to talk about themselves. So maybe I meet you for the first time at an event and I might say, hey, Nick, what is your business? I mean, that's kind of a common question, but another one might be, what are interests, or are you a native Coloradoan, or what hobbies do you have? And then most people will want to open up and talk about that.
Hey, this is Nick Armstrong, and you are with the Founded in FoCo podcast. And every episode, we get a chance to talk with an innovative mover and shaker doing cool and interesting things in our community. And today we are here with Ann Barron. Ann, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you having me on your podcast. So my name's Ann, obviously, Nick said that. And I founded Northern Colorado Community, which is a regional business networking group.
Tell us about what is that network like? Because there's business networks out there, and some of us might be familiar with things like, networking groups or whatever else. But tell us about what your network in particular focuses on.
The first key thing that I focus on is helping be that resource to small businesses and also seeing them thrive and grow. I'm at that age, that mature age of 63, so I don't need to work anymore. But I really do love helping small business people and just being that connector and being that person that sees their business grow through referrals, in-person events, and resources that are available.
Knowing that there are like a number of different small business resources out there, the chamber and so on, you saw a particular need. Was it specifically about the older demographic, or was it more just like there's something that they weren't quite getting at that you were able to address?
Yeah, great question. There are a lot of great networking groups out there. I definitely believe that there's a great group for any person or any business person who wants to get plugged into networking groups. And mainly what I was looking at is being more of a boutique networking group. What I mean by that is our events, we might have 15 to 25 people. So we're not huge events, but you really get a chance to talk to one another. And what I call my secret sauce on this, Nick, is that I make personal introductions for members to professionals they want to meet.
What a huge benefit for maybe an introverted business professional or somebody who's just getting into business, doesn't quite know how to do the networking thing just yet. And that can make a huge difference in somebody's business. Even for folks like me, we walk into a room, like there are 300 people in the room. How many, who do I talk to? What do I do? Having that personalized introduction can make all the difference.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And as you know, like, for instance, there's a lot of introverted people who really don't enjoy networking. They really feel like they kind of have to. But for instance, if they're at one of my networking events, I or one of the ambassadors will make sure to say, hey, Nick, you need to meet Susan over here. She might be an interesting professional for you to get to meet. And then as well as the email introductions where folks can chat on the phone, do a Zoom or meet in person. And then the one-on-one may be more comfortable and you've already had the soft introduction to that other professional.
Beyond the networking group, what do you do professionally?
Well, so as you probably can imagine, I wear many hats. So the networking group is a priority. I also have a husband who's a comic book writer. So I did do Kickstarters. I do his Patreon, his YouTube videos, and his social media. And then I volunteer and help like realities for children. I'm an ambassador, which means I just help to get the word about what they do as a nonprofit, helping families in need. And then the other thing is I love to do creative things. So I make greeting cards and we send them to people who are in nursing homes, who are in the hospital with cancer, children who are premature babies, military. So we send out cards every month. There's a group of us. And so that kind of fills the need of the creative, but also giving back to others.
I imagine that as you do more and more networking with folks, that there is a bigger and bigger network that comes in and joins your network as well.
Yeah, definitely. So as you know, everything, what is it? You're only 6 people removed from knowing, famous people, knowing the president of the United States or something. So it's really is, as you are aware, those connections and then nurturing them and keeping connected. In fact, one person who had changed careers, I just gave her a phone call like, hey, how are you? Just catching up, seeing how things are going. So it wasn't like I was trying to get her as a member. I just wanted to know what she was doing and that everything was well with her. So yes, the group grows, and of course you are involved in a lot of things as well. So you get to see people in different types of groups or arenas or different places. So those just kind of grow your network of folks that you either can help or you can connect or get to know, and just learn more about them professionally as well.
Have you seen any trends recently in terms of what your network is asking for, in terms of like the skill sets that they're looking for, or the particular levels up that they need?
Really, the main thing, as you know, we're somewhat in an economic, I guess they say, recession. So a lot of members or business people are wanting to grow their business and get new clients. And sometimes it's difficult because people say, I'm not spending money, or I don't have the resources to use that service. But sometimes it's the long game. You know, it's not like someone's going to be your client tomorrow normally, but it's just making those relationships, building those positive relationships. So then when they do need your business, then they'll remember, hey, Nick is a good person to connect to, or so-and-so real estate or insurance agent. So it's really not just like you're going to make an instant sale, but building those roots and making those key connections, and just kind of keeping people, as you know, top of mind, so they remember, oh yeah, Nick is still doing this, oh, Ann is still doing this. The other thing that I was recognized for is the #2 networking group in Northern Colorado in 2023 by Local Style, and they had over 200,000 people vote. So I was in there kind of sandwiched between what I call the big boys and girls. Fort Collins Chamber was #1, I was #2, and Loveland Chamber was #3. So it says to me that maybe I'm doing one or two things right.
Yeah. Well, and as you alluded to, if you are in multiple different, silos of your community, that belonging to multiple networking groups is actually a really easy shortcut to communicating effectively between all of those different silos. So,
Yes.
it's great to have so many different options in our community, and to have one that's so personalized, in fact, that you can rely on the organizers to bring you together as business professionals is awesome. So do you have any particular secret sauce for, like, when somebody comes in and they're new, they're kind of shy, aside from your personalized introduction, what do you tell them as somebody who's maybe like an intro, like, okay, here, say this or start with this, or here's your elevator pitch, or other things like that? What do you tell them?
Yeah, and that is a really wonderful question, because as you know, introverts or people who haven't networked a lot, they feel uncomfortable and they don't know what to do. So one of the things I suggest is just ask the other person about themselves. Most people like to talk about themselves. So maybe I meet you for the first time at an event and I might say, hey, Nick, what is your business? I mean, that's kind of a common question, but another one might be, what are interests, or are you a native Coloradoan, or what hobbies do you have? And then most people will want to open up and talk about that. Most people know we have a lot of dogs. We have 3 dogs. So if you ask us about our dogs, we will talk for an hour about that. But just asking other people about themselves.
Yeah, and I find that it's really similar to being like a decent podcast host, right? You just have to be able to make those connections to what folks are active listening. I've found also that improv skills tend to be a really effective thing. Yes, and tell me more about that. Or, yeah, and I've noticed this too, and blah, 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 blah. And so keeping the conversation going so there's not that weird, awkward pause. And I think that that's the thing that everybody is so afraid of, is the weird, awkward pause. But it's in those moments of, there's a gap here, that creativity can really be sparked. Like, you might dive into a conversation about your dogs, or you might dive into this other thing. I think also business owners are really afraid of, like, they're wasting time, right? And so even that being face to face with somebody, as you alluded to, if they're not going to become a client right now, that long-term game. So just understanding that impression of, oh, this person has asked me about my dogs. They actually kind of care about what I do as a person outside of this business context of, like, here's my business card and thank you for yours, and we'll put them in a nice little card catalog or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Like you said, the improv, or just talking about topics. And one of the things is I have several ambassadors or members who volunteer. And what I share with ambassadors is, like, go and look for that person that's kind of that wallflower. They're standing next to the drink or the food table, and they really aren't talking to anyone. And say, hey, Jim, maybe you want to meet Bill, and maybe you two might have an interest. And one of the things is I'm very purposeful about it. So I would, for instance, maybe introduce a real estate person to a mortgage person, or I might introduce a moving person to a person who, what's the word, does rental properties, manages rental properties. So I try to really be purposeful, because then they're going to have something in common and want to talk to each other.
It really does help to have that connector. And in it, I'm sure you know Nathan Scott. Nathan Scott is very much in that same style it's those ambassadors that are key. And it's interesting to see an organization very purposeful about. So what does make for a good ambassador beyond like looking for the wallflowers and maybe being social and knowing a little bit about other people's businesses?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I find when I ask people to be an ambassador is that they are involved in the group. They're attending the events somewhat on a regular basis, so they kind of know some of the other people who are attending. And so they would recognize when someone's probably a first-time guest, or maybe they're just shy or introverted. The other thing is they're usually someone that does something without my asking. So a good example is several of our events, we have food or beverages, and there's usually always cleanup or serving or doing something with that, with the eating and the beverages. So just jumping in there like, hey, I'll help clean up, or do we need to have more water bottles put out, or do we need more food put on the plate? So that person that I see them taking the initiative just to do things without my asking, and then I'll say, hey, so-and-so, would you like to be an ambassador? There's not a lot of time and commitment. We just ask to help with one event a month. And then I usually do a couple of special lunches or dinners where I pay for the ambassador to have a dinner, and we all have a nice dinner and meal together just as a thank you for them helping.
What have you seen as the most effective way to sort of extricate yourself from okay, this is great. I need to move on and talk to another person or whatever else. Because that it just happens all the time at networking events, where you're stuck in a conversation, or maybe this is maybe not a good fit at the moment, or I need another need at the moment. So what have you seen as effective in techniques for removing yourself from that?
You have to be kind of tactful about it. Obviously, you don't want to say, well, Jim, you're boring and I'm moving on. I mean, that's just rude. But for instance, I might just say, well, Jim, it looks like you're having a really good conversation with Susan here, and I'll let you two continue the conversation, and I'm going to go over and say hi to, Sally or something. So I kind of, letting them know, like a little explanation that I am going to move on to another group, but it looks like they're, have someone. I'm not going to leave them by themselves, but they have someone to talk to. So then, or maybe let's say it's only what name did I use? Bill. Anyway, it's only maybe this one person and I are speaking to each other, but I don't want to leave them by themselves. So then I might say, Bill, I'm going to introduce you to Jill over here. You two might have some common interests. So then I'll just do an introduction for them to another person in the group.
It's hey, have you seen the Fantastic Drinks by? And removing yourself from that situation.
That really good mocktail over there.
Tell us about your session at Founded in FoCo.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm really excited, and thank you for accepting my talk. So the talk is going to be building genuine connections to grow your business. And I do really believe it isn't something that just happens. It's not a one and done, like, okay, I'm going to meet you one time, Nick, and I'm expecting you to be my client. It doesn't work that way. So sometimes it's just keeping in touch. It's maybe sending out a little note or a phone call. Or if you see people at other events, just saying, hey, how are you doing? Remembering small details, like if they have a dog or they like to ski, and saying, hey, have you been up skiing, or how's your puppy doing? So it's just that little, I almost call it like a drip, 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 where you just slowly just kind of keeping in the top of their mind, but you're doing things that are beyond the normal. I mean, the normal is like you meet someone one time and you never talk to them again until you see them at another networking. Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to reach out and just say hi, hope you're all right. Or maybe if they're sick, you just send them a little get well card, or someone close to them passed away, you just send them a sympathy card. So it's just those little touches during COVID, as you know, we had to do things differently. And so one of the things I would do is just drop off a gift to someone's office, or I'd send them a card or call them. So I did little things just to keep them knowing that I was keeping them in mind. And during COVID, 2-3 years, I retained 90% of my clients.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that speaks to intentionality of, point of contact, checking in and making. So a lot of what happened during COVID was that isolation. We kind of sheltered in and didn't really talk to people that even we liked, right? We just sort of avoided everything at that time. So what a great way to prove efficacy for your event as well. Where can we find out more about your network and about your businesses in particular?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. There is a couple good places. If you're on Facebook, my Facebook page is Northern Colorado Community. So Northern Colorado Community. I do have a website, the same name, northerncoloradocommunity.com. So you can contact me there. And that was probably be the two easiest ways. Yeah, to follow the events or email me a message.
And there's nobody who knows networking like a networking group organizer.
I guess so.
So the sessions definitely come to check out Ann at Founded in FoCo. And the entire lineup of our entrepreneur community is going to be there March 4th through 8th at the Fort Collins Senior Center. And any last words of advice before we close out for the day?
I would just say make sure you have fun in your business, you make fun in your day, because life is too short, and just be joyful and happy and spread that sunshine around. So
yeah, awesome. For more great entrepreneurial words of advice and wisdom just like this one from Ann, make sure to tune into the Founded in FoCo podcast and foundedinfoco.com to check out our entire schedule for March 4th through 8th at the Fort Collins Senior Center. We'll see you there. Hey, thanks for listening. I'm Nick Armstrong, and this is a Founded in FoCo podcast. For more great interviews like this one, join us at foundedinfoco.com.